Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftingbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic manner. Today, we have a little story time. A tale of how a young health enthusiast swallowed his pride and implemented a supplementation protocol. And how a nagging issue that he wasn't even trying to fix got better in a week.
That was easy.
Oh, hi. Yeah, it's me. We are talking about the ever-growing importance of the nutrient, hormone, immunomodulator, vitamin D. Why? Despite whether you believe it or not, daily tanning may not be enough in order to optimize levels in your pretty cool meat suit. And whether you ask me how I know or not, I'm gonna tell you. So in the next 14 minutes and 62 seconds, we'll cover the hidden secrets of vitamin D, its immunomodulating powers, and how finally implementing a solid vitamin D protocol brought relief to a few chronic problems I had in a literal week, solving a nagging issue that wasn't even the goal of the protocol. And with that pleasant surprise, along with all the other places that vitamin D has been popping up in our other powwows, I decided an investigation was in order to see if I could make some sense to this madness. So here we are. I know, what a time to be alive. So first, let's start with what we already know. The non-secret stuff, vitamin D. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin that is stored in the liver and fat tissue of our body. And it has been long touted for its role in maintaining calcium balance and supporting bone health. However, over the last 2 decades, evidence has been accumulating, making the case for vitamin D's impact above and beyond just bone health. This in part was thanks to the discovery that the vitamin D receptor and the vitamin D activating enzyme 1A hydroxylase are expressed in several cells outside the bone and kidney, such as platelets, the intestines, pancreas, and prostate, revealing insights into how it plays critical roles in other physiological processes, such as blood pressure regulation, immune function, and cellular growth. And as we fast forward to present day, it seems like a day doesn't go by where we don't learn another tidbit on how its tentacles of wisdom influence other key cellular and metabolic functions. Kind of like the ring to that, tentacles of wisdom. Production team, write that one down. We're gonna have to use it in the next microbiome video to describe the beyond wise influence of our gut buddies down there. And with all this knowledge coming out around its health modulating powers, the question must be asked, what happens if you don't get enough daily D? That didn't come out. Yeah, production team, cut that part. A deficiency here has been associated with the pathogenesis or development of many acute and chronic conditions, including rickets, osteoporosis, autoimmune conditions, and cancer. Yikes. And wouldn't you know it, several cells involved in immune function express vitamin D receptors, suggesting that the active form of vitamin D in the body, 25-hydroxyvitamin D, is able to control immune function at different levels. Whoa. Modulating its activity. And knowing what we know about longevity liability numero uno, low-dose chronic inflammation, aka the chronic overactivity of the immune system, this area right here deserves a deeper dive. Who would have thunk? Vitamin D modulates the immune system. So what's really going on under the cellular hood here? Well, research suggests that vitamin D can modulate the regulation of a few things as it pertains to the immune system. First, it's been shown to downregulate antigen-presenting cells, which mediate the activity of the adaptive immune system response. Second, by controlling T-cell proliferation, or immune cells that can get out of hand and drive autoimmune conditions. And third, decrease the production of cytokines, specifically IL-2, from T helper cells, which play a big role in rallying the immune troops to a location. All in all, both human and animal data suggest that vitamin D and vitamin D receptor signaling together have a suppressive role on autoimmunity and an anti-inflammatory effect, which would seem to be good for biological business. But just like anything else in our body, context matters. Processes and reactions are neither good or bad until we understand the context around the response. Speaking of context, I wonder what this vitamin does in one of the most active origin areas for inflammation, the gut. Well, vitamin D has actually been shown to reinforce the physical barrier function of the gut's epithelial cells, building a stronger buffer zone between all the food we eat and pathogens consume, the tens of trillions of microorganisms that identify as non-self, and our immune army, where up to 60% reside on the internal side of our gut wall. Damn, okay. And when we're looking at autoimmune conditions like, I don't know, arthritis, nervous system, or even thyroid disease, which we discussed vitamin D's impact. Here, research has indicated that vitamin D deficiency is associated with many of these autoimmune conditions, including insulin-dependent diabetes, lupus, and rheumatoid arthritis, suggesting that vitamin D is an extrinsic factor capable of affecting the prevalence of autoimmune disease. Yeah. Anything else? It has also been implicated in the control of other inflammatory conditions, including one of the top killers that we face as a modern society, cardiovascular disease, a condition that needs inflammation to propagate, with low 25-hydroxy vitamin D levels being associated with an increased activation of inflammatory pathways in epicardial adipose tissue. Vitamin D's impact is something we learn more about each and every day. And the conclusion from a 2020 systematic review on the topic may describe our current understanding of this vitamin's immune system effects the best, stating, several studies point to the important role of vitamin D as an immunomodulator, and strong evidence demonstrates the role of 25-hydroxy vitamin D in increasing the ability of the innate immune system to fight against pathogens, whereas data on its effects in the modulation of the adaptive immune system are more controversial. So that's the data, and I'm sure there is more. Like I said, there is more information coming out almost daily on the topic. But this nonetheless was certainly interesting and intriguing, and definitely something that I was not fully up to speed on. So hopefully you learned something new as well. Oh, and while we're speaking of interesting and intriguing, here's, I was not talking about you, production team. You guys are like the opposite. Here is my totally N of one subjective experience that may have just fully got me on the vitamin D bandwagon. My unexpected experiment. All right, first off, before we get started, I personally am someone who likes to set up, test, and track all of his N of one experiments, but this one kind of just happened naturally. So please take this as speculative theory, a reverse engineering of what I think happened. And here's the background. For a few years, I've been dealing with some on and off inflammation in my left AC joint. And after getting an MRI a few years ago, it was diagnosed as inflammation, a result of wear and tear from college sports or my training, with no real reversal options. Only temporary treatments like an anti-inflammatory or a cortisol shot. Now, might I add, this was the recommendation from one of the top orthopedics on Long Island. So I opted with the thanks but no thanks, and went on my way to solve the issue myself. What could go wrong? And for the most part, I tried to tackle this with lifestyle factors. I continued to eat extremely clean, I followed a time-restricted feeding protocol, performed daily mobility and strength training, continued to prioritize sleep, and even increased the frequency of longevity boosting protocols such as cold exposure and grounding. And everything was going great. All the blood work was great, felt great, but the issue was still there. And with little improvements, I learned to just kind of deal with it. But a few weeks ago, as I noticed this trend of vitamin D and its health modulating powers continue to pop up in the literature that I was reviewing, I recalled that low vitamin D was the one thing that continuously popped up on my blood work year after year. And in my last panel to date, I was straight up deficient.
What did you say?
With a circulating level less than 20 nanograms per deciliter. And even though I was taking a prescribed supplement of vitamin D2 weekly, as well as prioritizing getting my chest and back in direct sunlight for 20 minutes a day, yearly levels continued to decrease. The turning point happened to be when I stumbled upon this little nugget in the aforementioned literature I was reviewing, that recent evidence was suggesting that vitamin D3 was a more bioavailable version of vitamin D than vitamin D2. D3 being the one you typically buy over the counter, and D2 typically being the one that gets prescribed to you. Oh, what a tangled web we weave. So with that, I ditched the vitamin D2 and started a protocol that consisted of 10,000 daily IU of D3 for a 3-week loading phase, with the plan to step down to 5,000 daily IUs starting week 4. Now remember, all of this was in an effort to improve cellular and metabolic health. That was 3 weeks ago. 1 week into the protocol, my shoulder annoyance, pain, discomfort was kaput. Finding this weird and not putting the pieces together just yet, I backtracked to try and figure out what the hell all of a sudden changed, to make not only the persistent inflammation in my shoulder go away, but the suspected inflammation in my knee as well. And thus, here we are. Me, you, production team, the whole gang. Now, is this a totally speculative theory with no hard data to support it? Yeah. But is there scientific data supporting that this may not be an entirely crazy hypothesis? Also yes. And I feel like at this point I have a few options. One being stop taking the vitamin D supplements for a couple of weeks and see what happens. Another, taking a close look at 25-hydroxy vitamin D levels in my next blood panel coming up. Or both. Although I'd rather not have the shoulder pain if I could choose not to. Call me selfish, but we might try the experiment. We'll see the blood work first. Either way, for the long term, I will be focusing on keeping my 25-hydroxy vitamin D or active serum vitamin D levels between 60 and 70 nanograms per deciliter, which seems to be the sweet spot as we know it thus far. It could always change. So what's the moral of the story here? For me, it's, although you may be doing everything right, hitting the mark with the majority of your dietary and lifestyle habits, the little things can make a big difference. Try not to brush them off as non-trivial. Know that there will always be new information, emerging data, and new connections. So it's super important to build a desire of health literacy, a curiosity for ways to put your body in a position to operate efficiently, and the humility to try new things. Yes, we are complex organisms, thus things can be complicated. But as my speculative story highlighted, things can be simple as well. And this is all part of the never-ending game of owning your health, which is my second favorite game. Only two. What has production team done now, Johnny? I like it because it happens to be the best way to train stress management on the market. Oh, you want to play? Perfect. Yeah, no, I'll send them to your house. Keep them for a week. Remember. Woo-sa. You'll understand why.